I've always been interested in animals and working in areas that are called wilderness areas, largely because my father used to keep animals at home, and there is this tradition of working with nature in the family. I wanted to do something which was different, something which had an impact that lasts beyond many years, something that makes a difference to a lot of people, to the society. The grandiose vision has always been there. In fact, my dreams have always been very grandiose. So once I finished college and I moved to Tamil Nadu, somehow that sort of gave me room to work on a lot of things, and I met a lot of good people. In fact, I met my mentor, Dr. Daniels, who said I have a natural ability to work on issues related to ecology and conservation, and that's how I started working.
Thank you, Mr. Chan, for that riveting half an hour. You had everyone hanging on every word of yours. We now move to our second $1 billion baby session of the day. It is the second Power Chat session with two more of our $1 billion babies. To facilitate this session, I would first like to call upon someone who's quite familiar to all of you. A serial entrepreneur of great repute. Please welcome Mr. Chandu Nair. To give the future perspective of these businesses, please welcome a global executive with cross-cultural and multi-continent business experience, Mr. Anupam Pahuja of PayPal. Just a small announcement before I call on the next person. The last session of Showcase will begin at 4 p.m. And now, let's welcome a seasoned executive in investment banking to share the rationale for selecting the chosen $1 billion babies. Managing Director, Global Corporate and Investment Banking Group of Bank of America, Mr. Ashwin Narasimhan. Also reminding you all to continue tweeting on hashtag TiECON Chennai 2014. That's the tweet handle. Okay, now I hand over charge of this session to Mr. Chandu Nair, who will take us through the next hour.
Thank you, Neil. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We've had a wonderful Ronnie Chan this afternoon. I share something similar with him. The first 4 letters of my name is the whole name of Ronnie's last name. So with a little bit of can-do spirit, I can become Chan-do. So with those very happy words, let me get on to a little more can-do thing about this $1 billion baby. Now, TiECON Chennai this year, when we looked at what can inspire this crowd here in Chennai, Because a lot of people think Chennai is like the back of beyond was the old, they like you heard Ramesh today say, whatever I do, but I'm still a Chennai boy. Like they say, you can take the boy out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the boy. And some country this is sometimes, because this impression about being conservative, not risk-taking, holding back your punches, we wanted to get rid of this kind of a mindset that we have here. And we said, let's do something dramatic. And that's how this concept of $1 billion baby, if China can have an Alibaba and a Jack Ma, why can't we have our own local Munusami with some other Baba? Not the Rajnikant Baba, but a better Baba. So we said, let's have $1 billion baby contest. And actually that has energized. And according to what I heard from Ashwin here and Anup Bagchi, the other judge, at the press conference, they were quite surprised at the range and diversity of enterprises now in Chennai. Now what our committee out here has done is looked at several organizations across a whole slew of industries, finally zeroed in on a few companies with the jury members individually met. And we finally have these 4 companies represent out here, which can become $1 billion babies, as JK said in the morning, either in terms of revenues or in terms of valuation. For many people in India, this thing about being too big is a frightening concept. But I think the more we see of Mr. Ronnie Chan, a Chandu can become a Chan, and that's the intent of today's session. May I now call upon the first of the $1 billion babies, congruent Mr. Raju, please, on stage. The video, please.
Congruent Solutions came into existence in 1999 and has focused on providing technology and processing services to the retirement plan market for the last 12 years. The company focuses in the US and UK markets with a large delivery center in India. Congruent recently pivoted to being a product company with its core DC suite of products for the retirement space. Having had the product acceptance by a Fortune 100 Tier 1 retirement plan service provider in the US, the company is poised to be a market leader.
See, we are actually in the US market alone. We are talking about technology spends of over $1 billion annually on record-keeping platforms and surround systems around it on an annual basis among the Tier 1 providers. One of the first things we decided was to look beyond India and the Asian market, and we set foot in the US in 2000. And one of our first customers in financial services area happened to be in the pension or the retirement vertical in the US. And 4 years into the US, we actually signed up our first client for back office pension administration services. Around 2010, we made this huge and monumental decision of developing the new generation record keeping platform for this market. Our product vision was that core DC will be a platform of choice for retirement plan providers globally to administer their record keeping. What is happening in the world market is that in the pension industry, traditional pensions were all defined benefit, and there is a very conscious shift towards defined contribution or the DC market. So DC is what the flavor of the future is, and when they move towards DC, I think core DC will be a platform of choice for them.
And now may I request Mr. Nagaraj Mailandla, founder of FSS, to also join us on stage, please. Mr. Nagaraj Mailandla, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon.
FSS is in the business of payment technology, providing a full spectrum of services and products to the industry. Started in 1991, the company's story has been closely aligned with the evolution of the payments industry in India. Starting with the launch of India's first ATM in Chennai in 1991, FSS has grown to servicing more than 140 financial institutions globally. Today, the company owns and manages more than 40,000 ATMs and handles millions of transactions per day.
A wide range of payment options in the retail space, anything you take where payments are required, right, and bill payments, all these things require origination point and end point. We are in the middle today, and we have grown from from a pure technology play to a processor today, owning our own infrastructure and providing delivering services. We achieved the first break by putting the Harbour branch first ATM for Indian Bank, 1991. A lot of selling was done between 91 to 97, and the big break was HDFC Bank. From 97 to 2002, the whole market, broke open for us. And about 2005, 2006, the managed service of ATMs, ownership of ATMs started becoming popular, and simultaneously other channels started breaking up. The future is because if you look at it from a single ATM to 200,000 ATMs, and we see that maybe going up to 500,000 to 600,000 ATMs in the next 3 to 4 years. Especially what is growing is the internet and mobile. With about almost 800 million phones in place, the payment as an instrument, mobile will become a big player.
Okay, so we have two very interesting companies. One, FSS, represented by Nagaraj Mailandla. So let's start with you, Raju. Your company was for many years into services, software services. Suddenly you got this bright idea of getting into products. Completely different mindset, completely different ball game. So let's understand what made you guys move from a very services-oriented, do all kinds of software implementation, etc., to a very focused kind of defined contribution space in pension administration. It's a big mouthful. Why don't you just walk us through this journey of migrating from a software service to a product company, and two, why this space? How did you understand and identify this niche?
Sure. I will probably start with the second part of your question. When we got into the US market, we started offering software services. That was the way we started the US market. But when we entered there, we focused very proactively on three segments, three verticals. One was retirement, second was e-learning, and the third was healthcare. These were the very focused areas that we were looking on, and it so happened that the very first project that we landed in the US happened to be for a retirement services company. In 2000, which is when the E401k kind of opportunities were coming up in the US. So we landed up with one of those companies and managed a project almost for about 2.5, 3 years, where we developed the platform for them. We were the development partners for them. So the focus was predominantly on these three verticals. And in the year 2004, we also started offering KPO services for this industry, for the retirement plan services. So our domain experience in the retirement segment kept growing. And also we started participating in industry forums within the retirement segment. Spark being one of them, Society for Pension Administrators and Record Keepers. And that gave us the opportunity to rub shoulders with the CXOs within the industry. And that's how we decided on doing this as the product, developing a product for the retirement industry. So coming back to your early first part of your question, services and how we transformed into a product company. We always try to keep going up in the value chain, and we thought having our own IP-based product will make us more valuable and will get us more value for what we are doing. So that's the reason why from a services company we transformed ourselves. We didn't really transform ourselves. We also have the services division and we also have the product division, but that was the reason why we started getting into the product side of it.
Now this migration from a services company, which is what most Indian companies generally like to do here, to a kind of product company, that to an enterprise class platform, which is not something that even tier 1 companies in India have succeeded in doing, barring maybe an iFlex, in some sense. Wasn't that itself a mental challenge to overcome?
It was, and as you said, there are two key things. One is enterprise class product, and the second is the geography that we were addressing, and the third is within that geography, the kind of companies that we were going after, which was the tier 1 BFSI organization in the US. Mm-hmm. So all three of them were big decisions for us. And getting into an enterprise class product in itself, it's not easy to develop an enterprise class product, and it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time. It's been about 3.5 years, a little more than 3.5 years now since we started this product journey, and it's been a lot of time. But then the challenge, we wanted to convert this challenge into an opportunity, and by going after the tier 1, especially in the US, that's where we thought we could have the best value for the product that we are creating, and it has turned out to be true. Each of our deals, even when we have an end-to-end platform which can be used by all of the retirement plan services providers, but we also offer what we call a point solution, where you could go with a modular offering. So some part of their key pain areas could be replaced, and our core DC's module can go in place of that. And each of those are turning out to be multi-million-dollar deals. So a tier 2 or a tier 3 will never be able to pay that kind of a money. And that's why, even though it is a more arduous journey and it took us a lot more than what we were like, we went in with that strategy, and we proactively focused only on tier 1 organizations and did not go to tier 2 or tier 3.
Okay, but just from the point of view of our entrepreneurs here, what I'm really trying to get at is, it calls for a mindset shift within the organization, okay, number 1. Number 2, it also calls for a different kind of a gestation period and a different kind of funding related situation. All these are very difficult things for many Indian companies particularly to manage. I'm talking about understanding a little bit of that, and what lessons have you learned from it which the audience here can take away?
Sure. So we were fortunate in one way, because we had this services arm and we also had this KPO arm. We had the ability to fund, to a major part, fund our product development processes. But the decision of that was not easy. But then we understood that by interacting with the industry, by interacting with the real operations guys within this industry, we understood the kind of challenges. While the decision to get in and jump into a product development itself was very hard, but then the board was completely behind us in supporting it. It was very hard, but we knew that once we have the proper product in place, the revenue that the rewards that we are going to get for that is going to be multifold. So that gave us the energy. We knew what we were getting into, we knew what is the rewards that we could get out of it, and that gave us the conviction to go and jump into it. It was hard, it wasn't an easy decision.
Okay. I'll come to how you sized the market and understood this niche a lot better later on.
Sure.
Let me jump to Mr. Mailandla, whose journey in entrepreneurship spans more than 2 decades, and he's had a rough ride. He has been trying to crack the payment space for the last, I don't know how many years now, more than 25 years.
23.
And it's only in the last few years that he's really seen cash by looking at payments. And payments is something that will not go out of fashion. So just walk us through this journey where you seem to have migrated across different kinds of payments and how you kept the faith over all these years.
I mean, I just started off with, my background is in, worked for Indian Overseas Bank here in Chennai before I went to Omaha, Nebraska to do my MBA. That's where I had an opportunity to work with First Data as well as ACI, which are the two global companies which specialize in payments. So that opportunity, but that was 1987 when the Black Monday happened, and there was no jobs, simple as that. And I was doing a project for ACI in 1988 to look at India as a market for their switches and ATM networks. And I called up all the banks here, and nobody knew about ATMs. Hardly one or two banks answered that what ATM was, they could understand. So it made me think whether to live there in -40, -60 weather in Omaha or come back to Chennai. And that made me come back. And I said, where there's no ATMs, I can create a market. And my dream was, like Chan was saying, I dreamt about whenever people stick their cards into an ATM, they should remember me. That's what I've achieved. Today, from the single ATM we put across an Indian bank in 1988-89 in Harbour Branch to 200,000 ATMs today. Our company has grown with that. And the journey is about 23 years, 24 years now. First 2 years, I came back here to work for ACI, 89 to 91. And after that, I quit and became a distributor for them. And I started the Tandem Computers as well as ACI here in India. They're the two main companies which specialize in payments, and they're everywhere, meaning they're into the Tandem Computers is into payment side, stock exchanges, and anything which is online. So it took me into the world of payments with two big brands with me. But later on today, we are on our own today. We have our own software today which into all these payment areas. Started out with ATMs in 91. Grown over a period of time with HDFC Bank as our first customer in 97. Then came in Axis, ICICI, SBI in 2000, and I have not looked back. We run almost 60,000 ATMs for State Bank of India, which is the largest, actually the largest single bank ATM network in the world today, with almost 150 million cards issued by the bank. So what we did was, as we were doing well in the switching area, we invested into the ATM side. And our vision was to get into all the aspects of payments over a period of time. And that's what we have done over a 23-year period today. So the company is in a very solid state today where I can expand into other payment mechanisms. So whenever we did well in one thing, we invested into the other one, incubated the other one. So we have ATMs, point of sale, mobile POS. We are into internet payments, mobile banking. So all the front-end channels is what we cover today. We recently got into prepaid in a big way, prepaid and value-added payments. And our intention is to not only in the retail space, but we are now getting into wholesale payments as well, into corporate payments and the RTGS and other payment mechanisms.
Nagaraj.
So it's a full-function payments company today. And we are the only one in India where we specialize in this area. And I do not have any Indian competition today. It's all MNCs today.
Fantastic story. But just to understand your journey a little better, one of the things that you seem to have done is kept morphing as the payment systems evolved, kept morphing. How did you keep track of all this, and what made you be chameleon-like and keep adapting and changing to the situation? How much of an entrepreneurial role did you play, and what are the lessons, again, our entrepreneurs here can take away from the changes that you witnessed yourself?
Simple thing is that listen to the customer. Right? When I put the switch in and we put the ATMs in, they came back to me and said, how do I issue the cards? Right? We created a card system. We are a product company today, basically because the customers wanted products and we built the products, and they become international today. So when HDFC Bank wanted a card system, we built it and gave it back to them. We have a good product there today. And ICICI came back and said, I have merchants, but I don't have a system to manage that. So we built a merchant system there. State Bank of India came back and said, I have a lot of volume, because they're one of the largest volume producers today in the world in terms of transactions. They came back and asked us to build a reconciliation system for them. So the way we have grown is to listen to the customer and go back and deliver and value add to them. Right? But in our own space, we have not, a lot of temptations have been to replicate what larger companies have done into various verticals, but we stuck to the payment space and we have grown there because there's enough space there, not only in this country but outside the country as well.
One of the very interesting things is your real growth has come only in the last few years.
Last 7 years.
7 years. And especially in the last 4 years, you've virtually tripled revenue. If I may mention the numbers.
We have been doubling, yeah.
Yeah, it was from 200 crores roughly 4 years ago to over
2 years ago.
4 years ago, it was 230 odd crores. Yeah. And right now, it's about 650 crores.
This year, 850.
And 850 this year. So just explain this, how did you keep the faith that after these 23, 24 years, for 16 years, you were probably less than 100 crores. And it's only in the last 4 years, 5 years that you really exploded. How did you just say to yourself, this is the space I belong to, and this is the space I'll focus on?
It's very difficult to answer that today, but I'll attempt it. The simple thing is that I believed as an entrepreneur that I had to put money into my people first. And when I choose the people, I have to be in the domain in which we work. So it's a very niche company which domain people today. And we are the only ones in this country which can offer. And if you go to any large company, my friend is here from CTS, half my people are there. But, but when they require people in that area, if you look at any company here, FSS provided people from the payments domain, right? So that's the kind of attention to detail we play in, first of all, creating the people. Then the second thing I believed was to put the infrastructure in place, ensure that people can work on it, and we can become the experts in that area. So what we are known, any bank we go to, we deliver. The delivery is the key to our success, right? And also moving from one payment mechanism to the other. The third one has been consistent investments coming into the company. 2000 Carlyle, 2004 Carlyle, 2009 was NEA Jacobalis. Now, recently, a month ago, Premji Invest has put money into us. And our intention is to be a public company in about 18 months. So all these factors put together helps us to be well.
Will you let this crowd here know when you're planning to do IPO? Any private placement?
It's already in the it's already there, 18 months from now.
Okay, guys, pre-placement offer closely held maybe from Mr. Nagaraj Mailandla. Let me jump back to you, Raju, with Cognizance getting into the marketplace. It's very fine to sit and build a product, but you already have entrenched players, especially the markets you were looking at, the US and the UK, and they're not going to sit back and take it, lying down. What exactly was your strategy to differentiate yourself? How did you go about actually implementing it on the ground?
So the competition there is...
No, let me just add one more thing. Compared to FSS, this is a significantly smaller company.
Absolutely.
Okay, probably less than 1/10 the size, I think, in relative terms. But the ambition seems to be of a different order of magnitude. So what I'm trying to get a sense of here is how this intention is being translated into on-the-ground tactics and strategies.
Sure. So, we are just about a 200 strong organization. So, we are not big in any way. So, but then the opportunity presented itself. If you look at the competitive landscape in this particular industry, it's predominantly you can break it up into three. One is the proprietary systems. 40% of the organizations in this industry use their own homegrown proprietary systems. And the market leader as a product is a company called SunGuards. They have a product called Omni, and they have about 39 to 40% market share. And the remaining is all spread out amongst one or two other companies. The way it has transpired is most of these applications and record-keeping systems are built over the last 15, 20 years, 2 decades old product. And you know what technology was and what technology could do for such kind of products. So it was truly meant to be a true record-keeping system. Everything happening in paper, and then the results of it is put into the system and maintained electronically. And that is the kind of applications or products that many of these organizations have today. And to meet the demanding needs of the current day market, what these organizations have done is to build multiple surround systems around it, to provide web-based interfaces, to provide voice interfaces, a lot of other things. So the scenario today is many organizations, they have close to about 100, 150 plus applications, and that is the kind of application landscape that they have to manage on a day-to-day basis. And because of which the expenses is within the industry, across the industry, the tier 1, if you look at it, it runs into billions. And the product that we have come up with, and the end-to-end enterprise class product, can replace at least about 60 to 70% of these applications out. It can take it out, and then this one particular product can take out 60% of the applications that these organizations currently use. And that is our value proposition. And it also so happened that many of the other product companies, they have not had a sale for the last about 4 or 5 years. They have not been able to make a sale because of the kind of a product that they currently have. And we used to sit back and wonder as to a company like ours, if we can come up with this kind of a modern product, why can't those entrenched players come up with something similar? And it is baffling for us in a way. I mean, it really baffles the heck out of us to say why an entrenched player is unable to do such a thing. I mean, and it's our good fortune that those companies are not doing it, and we have taken up that opportunity to come up with a product which can replace 60-70% of the applications that they have in-house.
But you know, you're dealing with the financial services industry, which is notorious for being kind of conservative in terms of trying out new products.
Right.
And especially something which is from a small company which doesn't have balance sheet, which doesn't have credible name. How are you tackling this issue?
So 2 ways. One is, it is again fortunate for us to partner with a large SI organization in India. So we have them as our implementation partners, and they bring the scale. I mean, any implementation of this product would be possibly about 18 months upwards. That would be the time it takes to implement, and it would need, I mean, I said we are about 200 members strong, and each implementation may itself take about 40, 50 member team to put in the implementation. So we were fortunate to have very strong implementation partners with whom we go into these deals. And the other thing is...
Can you name them?
We have a non-disclosure with them, so unfortunately without their permissions I will not be able to name the organization.
Would it be in the top 10 in the Indian industry?
Yes, they are in the top 2, top 3 in the industry, and a very strong player globally, a very strong player globally. So I mean, that's a good thing that has happened for us, and that partner is also from a perspective, I mean, they work with a lot of product companies, and they actually did a due diligence before accepting to be a partner with us. Their technology team, their domain team came in and looked at what we are building, and they did a due diligence before they agreed to be a partner for us.
And this process took how much time?
It was close to about a week-long exercise that we had, but that was a week-long is a face-to-face exercise, but they did their own due diligence outside of being face-to-face with us as well. And they also checked with the marketplace to see what kind of a reaction this would have. So it was a certain level of diligence before they even agreed to be a partner.
So you have a SI partner in the top 10. So what else? Is that alone? Is that necessary?
That is one.
Okay.
Yes, that is one. And as is rightly said, The BFSI, especially in the US, is extremely conservative and risk averse. They do not want to change the status quo. They hesitate or take a long time to change the status quo. So from that perspective, what we have done is go with a point solution, what we are calling a point solution. I mean, while they hesitate to change, rip and replace the entire systems and then put a new system in place, we have gone in with a modular solution. So, for example, in a business process, this particular industry would have about 14 to 15 business processes to manage the day in a life of a retirement plan. So what we have done is to provide modular solution. Take one business process and apply that business process instead of replacing their entire application landscape. We provide one business process and then integrate that business process to their existing systems. Okay? Thereby, you minimize or take away the risk of any wholesale failure for them, for our customers.
Okay.
But at the same time, with entry into one, you tend to increase the footprint with more and more such modules. Once they have tasted a success with one module, we are reasonably confident that they would want to do more. And even with our existing customers, they are already talking about the other additional modules which they want to.
So, you've used a large partner which takes care of the balance sheet kind of issues, of credibility, etc. B, you've done a different kind of product strategy. But how do you still get your name out there and known? You know, because the small companies here struggle with that issue. And how do you plan to do that? Because from here, you are looking at being $1 billion in valuation. So what is exactly the game plan that's unfolding?
Sure. I mean, that game plan actually started a few years back.
Okay.
As I said, Spark is an industry forum. And Spark...
what is the full form of Spark for many of us?
Society for Pension Administrators and Record Keepers.
Okay. And at this point in time, just walk us through a little bit about how big the market is, you know, as you're talking about it.
Sure. I mean, we internally have broken down the market into three segments, what we call the tier 1, tier 2 and tier 3 players. The industry sizes the market or sizes the organization in different perspectives. One of them is the asset under management. Each organization, what is the asset under management by each of these retirement service providers? A. B, how many plans do they offer to their customers, which is how many end organization customers, B2B customers do they have? And C, how much of B2C customers do they have? When I say B2C customers, here it is, their customers are the employees of their customers, is the B2C angle to this. So these are the three broad parameters in which the organizations are ranked. And for us, we looked at that B2C because our pricing model will be on a B2C basis. Though our sale is to the organization, our pricing will be different. So amongst the top 40 providers, there are about 140 million B2C customers. What we call the plan participants. They are the employees of the organization who enroll into the plan. So the participant base amongst these 40 large providers is 140 million.
140 million?
140 million.
In the US alone?
In the US alone.
Okay.
I'm only talking about US today because today our focus is in the US. Though the product is global, it can be applied and taken to the global market. Today we are focused only in the US and we want to succeed in the US market before going out. So 140 million is the size of the market from the number of participants perspective. And the assets they manage is, I just was doing some math before this event and I didn't even know there's something called as quadrillions. And it's in the hundreds of quadrillions is the assets that they manage amongst the top 40 retirement providers in the US.
So there's a lot of business out there, you're saying?
There's a lot of money and there's a lot of business out there.
And there are only a handful of players for you to continue
There's only a handful of players. And today the spend that they have, per participant spend, they have is is in the upper teens. That is the amount of dollar per year per participant they spend, the industry spends. And our intent is to go at 50%. And you can imagine at 50% and this base, I mean, we don't even want this entire 140 million. Even a 10% of that is good enough to look at this is the revenue per year.
And
so
that is something you're very confident about.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because of the kind of product that we have, which actually not only takes away the number of systems that they have, it also increases the efficiency and productivity of the staff of our customers. I mean, today, many of them are completely manual oriented. I mean, they bring in some data, it has got to be processed through a mainframe system. And at the end of the day, you get a report back to say, these are the exceptions that you have in that, and then it has got to be taken back again.
So what I'm hearing you say is basically, A, go with a strong partner if you are low on credibility or you're low on size. Number two, make sure your product is the absolute best in class.
Absolutely.
It's the best that's out there, creams existing competition. Number three, before you really go out into the market, prepare the ground much before. So if you have 6 hours to cut a tree, spend 5 hours sharpening the axe.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's basically what you're trying to say. Okay, let me just move into Mr. Nagaraj. You know, you have been into payments for a long, long time. And you've been in all kinds of payments. But surely, you know, you made one statement here. One, you said that you don't have any competition in India. Many investors in this room will say, that's one statement we don't want to hear from a company. Yet you got funded 3 times.
4 times.
4 times. Now, explain, you know.
Let me qualify it very, very carefully. Number one, I don't have local, Indian company competition. The competition is mainly MNCs. And in the last 7 years, 2007, I was called a switching company. Today, I'm a payments company. 7-year transformation has been from a pure switch company. We went into the ATM business, went to the point of sale business, went into internet. We are the #1 internet payment gateway in the country. We have surpassed ICICI and Citibank payment gateway. It's shared by about 21 banks. We are the #1 mobile banking, mobile payment gateway as well. It's shared by about 22 banks. So all this transformation has happened purely because of the investments we have made. We made about 600 crores investment in the last 7 years.
Into new products,
new products, new technology, all homegrown and built ground up. So this transformation is 7-year-old, right? And what you see from a switching company to a payments company is not easy to achieve, right? I don't know how many of you know First Data. We are a lookalike of a First Data. I'm a lookalike of an ACI because I have a product and services company within the company and a hosted services company where I get paid on a transaction basis.
Just walk us through this transformation, no? Because I think it's
the
important.
Transformation was important for us because otherwise I would have not been on the stage today.
No, but just walk
right,
us
I would
through.
have been out of business. Maybe,
what I'm wanting to understand is, sorry to interrupt you, but this process of transformation, because I think that is what is critical for us to figure out. How exactly can we change our own companies to becoming companies like yours?
Yeah. So the change has been every 5 years for us. Every 5 years, we had to revamp what we were doing and look at new avenues, but within the same space, And these 7 years is that, the country also has gone through a lot of changes in the country. The banks have transformed from what they were earlier from branch banking to alternate channels. So every time they moved into a new alternate channel, we were there, the first one to. The first mover advantage was always with us. We invested early. We always invested about 18 months ahead of a particular idea, and it's always paid off to us. Out of maybe 20, 25, 30 ideas we put across to the customers, maybe only 2 failed. 23 have succeeded, right? Which means we have read the customer right, number one, and customers confided to us. They have the 100% trust with us because banking is not easy. Financial institutions are not easy to handle. So it's the 100% trust they have which has helped us to transform where we are. And anything which we knew we take to them, they're able to absorb it because they have the trust we have delivered something earlier, and bettered their requirements, basically.
Okay, I'll just ask you one question. For both of you are in businesses which are very behind the public eye, which is not visible to the public eye. I was just reading a news article a couple of days ago that while these e-commerce companies are having fancy valuations, the ones which are actually seeing dramatic rises in the share prices based on actual cash generated by them are the logistics companies like Gati and TCI. So, Nagaraj, in the good old California gold prospecting days, the guys who made the money were not the fellows prospecting for gold, but it was those who were supplying the pans and the tents and the shovels and all that. Do you see yourself like that?
Maybe, why not, yeah.
And you think there's really more money to be had, doing all that than actually prospecting for gold, and therefore the e-commerce companies maybe are barking up the wrong tree?
See, if you look at it on the day when Flipkart did their $1 billion sale, almost 50 or 60% of their volume went through our payment gateway.
And you actually made money on it?
I made money on it.
Okay.
Right?
That is,
number one.
That is the point.
Number two is that our technology and preparedness, our payment gateway didn't go down.
Okay, great.
Systems worked, right? So all the bank transactions went through, right? They had problems on Flipkart, but we didn't have the problems.
Great.
Right?
Now,
it depends upon keeping your systems up, because today, that 7-year transformation quickly, 7 years ago, we were a licensed company. I used to sell the products, license it, AMCs, service revenue. Today, 65% of our revenue comes from by the click. Each time any of you use a card or a mobile transaction or internet transaction, I get paid. Right? So there are about 35 banks on my network. We are connected to all verticals, airlines, transportation, railways. We are the #1 gateway on IRCTC, if you look at it. So you go to medical payments, you go to schools, colleges, clubs. What we have done is to go and, integrate ourselves into all the verticals possible, because there is the transactions originate there and end in the bank. So debits and credits are done by the bank, we are in the middle. So our goal is to be, wherever you originate transaction, wherever you transact, we are there, and we are part of the Prime Minister's rural payment network as well. HDFC Bank and Kerala banks have gone live recently, and hopefully that will also take us to the next level of, the click by the click, basically.
Great. Now I'll just move on to a very interesting and very important person, Mr. Ashwin Narasimhan here, the MD of Investment Banking of Bank of America, South India. And he was one of the 2 jury members who selected these companies. I'd just like you to tell us, how exactly you came across these 4 companies as your final choices, and particularly these 2 out here.
When we started this,
I'm sorry, I should have given it to you.
I think it's on.
Keep it here.
can you pass that?
Okay.
Thanks.
It's working.
When we started this exercise, we were actually quite surprised to see in that 80-odd companies which were given to us, that there were quite a few from the manufacturing sector also. There were companies across industries, and the companies from the payments. You have 2 companies which are largely, you can say, in the BFSI space or financial services space, but there is nothing common between them beyond that. So we had a very interesting set of companies that we played with. And one thing which was common to all the 4 that we selected was within their fields, they had the best technologies working with them. So whether it was in the area of water purification or in the area of payments or in the area of pension funds, they had the best technology backing their products. Now, after that, we looked at the relative sizes of the companies, the sizes of the markets that they were operating in. It gave us a lot of comfort to see that FSS in particular had a 50% market share in payments. So when I spoke to the other judge, Anup, and I told him, if I pay you an amount and you receive that amount, on at least one of the 2 transactions, FSS gets paid. And when we looked at a number like that, we realized what is the potential for FSS to grow in this market. We looked at companies which were both present largely in India and operating businesses largely in India like FSS, or companies that were operating only overseas, which was the case with Congruent, that they were present largely in US and a little bit of market in the UK. So we sort of equalized these factors to arrive at the top 4 names, which would work out in terms of reaching $1 billion, whether in valuation or in turnover at the earliest possible time. And the reason we took valuation or turnover is that given the different industries that we looked at, there were companies which had a potential of reaching a valuation of $1 billion much faster than reaching the turnover of $1 billion. And there were other companies which had possibilities of reaching a turnover of $1 billion, but given the market multiples that they enjoyed at this point in time, their valuation may possibly drag behind their turnover. Specifically in terms of why did we decide that FSS would be one of the 4? And the point was made by him today in terms of the market share and the sheer presence that he has. We also looked at that there were at least 5 phases between 1990 and today in terms of the financial services industry in the payment space, whether it is starting from the ATMs or the point of sale purchase or the RuPay or today's payment processes. And in each one of these 5 phases, FSS had caught the trend early. They had worked out a solution. It is, as Mr. Nagaraj pointed out, HDFC Bank or some other customers of theirs had come to them and asked for a solution to certain problems that they faced. The important thing is that FSS developed products and customized solutions for those banks. So at each one of the 5 occasions, they harnessed and maximized the opportunity that was presented to them, which was a very strong positive when we noted as far as that company is concerned. We also looked at the changing behavior in terms of the way we make purchases. We have a set of population in the country which has never transacted an electronic payment in its life. We also have a set of population in the country which has never gone to a bank branch in its life and has never written a check in its life. When we look at the population that is young and that has never gone to a branch, never written a check, and you look at it over a 10-15 year period, you have e-commerce, mobile commerce, and every electronic way of making payments or receiving payments growing exponentially in this market. We also take into account, we had the recent instances of Flipkart and Amazon, and people are getting more and more comfortable in terms of making purchases from a portal in an e-commerce sense. And that is another thing which adds in terms of the business potential that exists for them in increasing the sheer number of payments. Total volume or the total market size for FSS is expected to grow quite exponentially. Their valuation will be in typically a multiple of their turnover, as is being demonstrated by the sort of valuation that they've enjoyed a month back when they did their last deal. And that gave us the comfort to say that this is one of the companies which is best placed to be in the $1 billion club. When it came to Congruent, if you look at the global pension industry, it usually pays on what is called a defined contribution or a defined benefit. From an employee perspective, the defined benefit obviously works very well, and large parts of Europe operate on a defined benefit basis. It's no secret that most pension funds, if they work on the defined benefit basis in an uncertain market, will all be bankrupt short. And therefore, the world is moving towards the defined contribution basis. And if you look at the large markets like US, UK, New Zealand, Australia, they're all moving towards the defined contribution basis. And that is where the product from Congruent, which is Core DC, the DC I think there stands for defined contribution, is a product which is very well suited for that particular market. If you look at the main players that Congruent, main customers, or let's say the market for Congruent, there are about 72 odd players in there. And in that 72 odd customers in there. In that 72 customers, I believe SunGuard, which is the biggest, has something like 33 customers out of that 72. But another equally large number, like 35, are managed by what is called the proprietary departments of those funds. And that represents the single largest opportunity from a Congruent perspective. This pension administration is like the plumbing in your house. You do not want to change it. Once you have given it to somebody, you leave it to that person to manage. If there is no problem in this, nobody realizes that the plumbing is working fine. The day there is a problem, all hell breaks loose. Nobody wants to take a chance with trying new stuff in that area unless there are very clear benefits coming in. You also don't want to do the plumbing change when you're living in the same house, and it is very difficult for pension administrations to change on a stop basis. It has all to be done at the same point in time. So in early 90s, there used to be a credit card ad, and it used to say that we do not compete with other cards in this country or the world. We compete with cash. That was the competitor for the credit card at that time. So if you look at who's Congruent's major competitor, he has to get the various other proprietary businesses that is run by those pension funds. That is their biggest competitor. As they convert those 35 into either a Congruent or any such product, that is where the biggest opportunity for them comes from. Market estimates were something like $1.5 billion, of which they could have addressed about 700 million currently, but growing with time. And these are very, very sticky businesses. Both these businesses are extremely sticky. And sticky businesses typically enjoy a multiple in the market, which is a multiple of their turnover levels, which we took into account for both these companies. The other thing which impressed us about Congruent's product is that you can develop a product from a pension administration sense, but it has to have the capability to take the changes that come in over time. And typically the IRS or other such departments will keep tweaking the laws, and your product needs to have the ability to make do with those changes and develop it on an ongoing basis. And Core DC had this ability, and that is another thing which gave us a lot of comfort about that product. So basically we took into account that, as somebody else pointed out in the morning, these are both two trees which were planted at completely different points in time with different growth rates, but they both had, in our opinion, the potential to grow to that $1 billion number in a valuation or in a turnover sense, and that gave us the comfort to give them in the first four on that list.
I think, Ashwin, you gave us a fantastic idea of the entire thought process and the reasons why you chose these companies. Now we have Anupam Pahuja, who's no stranger himself to the payment business, being GM of PayPal APAC region, basically the big boss of PayPal this part of the world. Anupam, as the futurist here, what do you see as the outlook for these companies and the challenges that you think they might likely face?
First of all, the good news is that nobody's seen the future, so I can say whatever I want. So, no, first of all, I'm very bullish about both these companies. I spent enough time with Ashwin talking about the companies and with Nagaraj here as well. So first and foremost, I think one has to look at the market, right? If you look at just the payments market for a second, I think this market is going to see more innovation, more disruption, more invention than it has seen in the last 50 years in the next 5 years. So I think this market is ready to be disrupted in a big way. I feel regardless of what happens, given that FSS provides the plumbing, not necessarily the front-end pieces of the transactions, plumbing will be required whichever house you build, whether you build a house that's made of wood or whatever else. So he's set up in a good way. His company is set up in a good way from that perspective. But I do see more and more transactions, more and more actions happening in the digital space rather than on the space outside of the digital space. One area where I think we need to be a little sort of conscious of is that banks have enjoyed charging enormous amount of fees to our merchants, right? I think the average, Ashwin, is what, 2.7% or thereabouts? 2%. And merchants hate nothing more than banks. And whether FSS gets disrupted or not, for sure, there's a lot of this angst being built against the amount of money merchants are paying towards banks. And how do you reduce that amount of money? What that impact is, one has to see. How that gets disrupted has yet to be seen. But clearly, this market is ripe for disruption. The second point I wanted to make was about the company itself. I've read through the history of FSS, and what I found was you've been able to morph yourself through ages, right? And that's very key. One needs to pivot, and one needs to pivot quickly as you move ahead. The challenge there is one needs to be also true to their DNA. And I think it stands for both the companies. You have to know what your core competence is. And at a very extrapolated high level, are you a services company or are you a products company? And oftentimes, you cannot do both, especially when you're growing at a very rapid pace, because the bandwidth of the management, the bandwidth of the board, the bandwidth of the people involved gets dissected, and therefore you have to be very, very careful as to what your focus area is and continue to work in that capacity. I think there are some other points, but I see the pointer here turning red. So what I'll do is just talk a little bit about your company. Again, I feel, you know, outside of death and taxes, one thing is for sure, is people are getting old. And so the market is going to continue to grow. There's no doubt in my mind. Also, I feel from defined benefits to defined contributions, that's where the US market is today, the UK market is today. I feel other countries are also going to go into that space. So what that does for you is an ability to grow your market share, not only in the United States, but worldwide. What I was not so sure about was within the vertical that you're in, do you need to look at adjacencies there or not? Given that I felt that the addressable market size in one of the documents I read on your company was about $700 million. And so if you want to be a billion-dollar company in a market that's worth $700 million by revenue, it's going to be not the easiest thing in the world. So do you look at adjacencies? Do you look at other areas? Do you want to remain in the market space? Just like the retirement B2C segment, I think is where you're at. Are there other segments you want to focus on? Outside of that, I think 1 minute left, so I'll turn it back to you, Chandu.
Okay, I don't know if you guys want to make quick comments, but we are really running out of time. I think we were supposed to originally finish this by 4 o'clock, but we were told to extend till about 4:15. I'm sure there are a lot more questions. I have actually a ton more questions to ask these gentlemen. But if you have any more questions, you could definitely ask them during the next session or whatever. They're hanging around here for a little while, both Raju as well as Mr. Nagaraj. And Anupam and Ashwin have been here for a lot of the day today as also yesterday. What we would like you to take away from this billion-dollar baby thing is, very simply, as our theme says, I can do it. They are saying they can do it. They're showing that they can do it. Now the question is, can you do it? And like JK asked you in the morning, I'd like to hear a resounding answer from you. Can you do it? Yes. Great. Now, can I stop this session? Yes, I can. Thank you, Ashwin. Thank you, Raju. Thank you, Nagaraj. And thank you, Anupam. I'm sorry, we have a little bit of the housekeeping matters to do. The presentation of the memento. Sorry, what award?
Award to, I think, the two companies.
Oh, the billion-dollar baby award. May I call upon Mr. Lakshmi Narayan, Thai President, to come over on stage and hand over the billion-dollar baby award to Mr. Nagaraj Mailandla and Naru R. Narayanan. Are you here? Ladies and gentlemen, Nagaraj Mailandla, FSS. Take a photo, Mr. Ashwin, please. Come. And Naru to Raju, Mr. Ashwin, and Anupam, please. Thanks so much, sir.
over the years, we realized that we have built a unique model, and through a route of organic and inorganic growth, I think we have succeeded in reaching a scale which has now made an opportunity to create a global company, and that's what we are looking forward to achieve with regard to our continued growth story. Our goal was to make sure that we not only have a unique model of business growth, but also to make everyone connected with us feel delighted in achieving their ambitions and goals. And whatever we have achieved today is because of the little success we have had in that. And if I can say, the future is going to be in the hands of not just the people who have started this growth, but who are going to make it happen in the years to come. So we do look forward to this journey with renewed enthusiasm and vigor.